Today is all about improving quality assurance on PHP projects. It's a very common thing these days to improve your quality assurance, and hopefully with this webinar you will be able to improve your own project with the tools that I present to you today. Who am I? Michelangelo van Dam. I'm an independent consultant. I'm also Zen certified, and I'm president of PHP Benelux, which is a user group in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. But that's enough about me. What are the benefits of quality assurance? First of all, early detection of issues. You first want to detect the issues before your customer does it. You also get cleaner and consistent code. You get a better knowledge about the code base, and also the confidence will increase, not just by your development team, but also by your managers and by your salespersons, who will have the influence on the customers. If everyone is confident that everything is working as planned, everyone is happy, and the project will be a success. Lots of the tools that we're discussing today are built and designed by Sebastian Bergman, so I will give him some credit here. He's, in my opinion, the QA expert in regards to PHP quality assurance. He wrote most of the tools. He speaks a lot on conferences and is a great inspirer if you have the opportunity to work closely with him on, for instance, a PHP test fest or something like that. So go see him at one of the conferences around the world. He's traveling a lot, so there's a good chance you will get to see him close to your home. And shake his hand and thank him for all the great tools that he has provided the PHP community with. With no further ado, the usual suspects. Of course, PHP itself has a fantastic tool called PHP PHP Documenter, which is a tool that generates your API documentation. All you need to do is to provide in-code doc blocks, and PHP Documenter will take it and write some nifty documentation for that. PHP Mess Detector detects crappy code, so to speak. PHP Unit will be your testing tool. PHP Code Sniffer and PHP Depend will give you better insights on the internals of your PHP code base. PHP Code Sniffer is actually a tool that allows you to monitor that coding standards that you have agreed upon are being used by your development team, and PHP Depend will give you insights on the dependencies of your code base. Before you ask the question, the source code is on GitHub. Just go to my GitHub account, go for ZF test, and download the source code. Everything that you will see today will be available there. Install it with your default Zen framework installation procedure. Run it, and you will be able to follow along the examples here, or do it after the webinar, so you have more time and be prepared when the webinar is published on the website of Zen. I myself have a specific virtual host setting. First of all, you have your normal document roots kind of installation, but I also create aliases. An alias for reports will give me a immediate access to all the log reporting that these tools are providing. So I don't actually have to go on file system and look for it, especially when it's done on a remote server. It's just one of those things that makes life a lot more easier. So I think it's showtime. First of all, let's do some syntax checking. This is actually a tool that you can hook on to your version control system, whether it's Git or Subversion, maybe even what's it called, CVS. I haven't used it so much, so I'm not really familiar with it. But you can have some pre-commit hooks that actually execute this syntax checking before the code is actually committed and returns an error message if the code is not valid. So you can actually have your developers fix the problem before it even is a problem, which is always a good thing. It's a very simple command. This is what I use to browse over my directories, but you have to look at PHP minus LF and the file name, and it will actually check that file for syntax errors. So if you put this in your pre-commit hook, all you have to do is PHP min LF and the file that you want to verify. When I run it on my command line, it goes through my directory, the PHP files, and says, hey, no errors. So let's generate a parse error. So I forgot a semicolon. And as you will see, it will notify you of PHP parse error, unexpected end in public fail of PHP. And a fatal error when you have two functions with the same name, for instance. There you go. You have a fatal. So this is a tool that just sees that everything is okay. And if it's not, it will report this back to you. So it's not a really big tool, but it helps. Makes life a lot more easier. Up to the next one, code documentation. Most people have heard about it. Most people have added inline code blocks, documentation above their code blocks. But I haven't really seen a lot of developers actually running the documentation in a frequency that's actually performing API documentation that's up to date. So hopefully after today, everyone will be better at maintaining their API documentation and can provide a lot more information to new members on the team, and also provide some information to the customer if they have questions regarding the interfaces or something like that. It's very simple CLI commands. First of all, you use a template, which is -o. If you have README files, install files, changelog files, you can add them with RIC. The title TI is ZFTest example code. My default category would be ZFTest. My default package would be ZFTest model if I forgot to put the package there. And of course, my directories would be application models, application forms, and libraries ZFTest. Those are, if you're working with Zen Framework, those would be your normal directories that you would scan. You don't have to scan Zen Framework in that matter because Zen Framework is already good documented and everything would be provided with your download. I also ignore my .phhtml files because my views don't have any logic in it, and hopefully no one has put logic in their view files. And I want to have the documentation written to my docs.api target directory. Okay? I run it on command line. it generates my documentation, and out comes a very nice looking view. Of course, these are just a few classes that I've been using in preparation to this presentation. If you have larger projects, you will get to see the separation of your packages and also about your categories. So the more categories you put in place, the more differentiation in your class trees you will find in your API documentation. But like I said, this is just an example. On to the next one, coding standards. Everyone should follow some guidelines regarding how their code should look like. And this is also refers to coding standards. And most of the companies that I work for have implementations of their own standards, which are about 99% the same as either the PAIR standard or the Zen framework standard. If you do implement your own coding standard, be sure that you document it fairly well, because nothing is as bad for new members on the team that they have no clue how the coding standards look like if no documentation is being provided. And if you really are that close to the general standards, use the general standards. They have all the tools already available to enforce coding standards, and it's no use that you have to create your own coding standards. That's just a minor difference from the others. The benefit of having coding standards in place, make sure that everyone writes the same way, so your code base is clean and consistent, and that makes it, the code much more readable also for new members on the team. If new members can look at the code from developer A and looks at the code of developer B, it will be a match, so he won't recognize which code comes from developer A or from developer B, which makes it a lot more easier and much more relaxed to read it, especially when you hire a consultant that has to audit the source code. Makes it also a lot easier. Otherwise, the consultant would spend more time, and that would cost a little bit more. So it's a money saver as well. This is how you can call code sniffer on command line. PHP CS. It's a standard. I use the Zen framework standard. I look for the extension TP. I want a full report, and I want my report to be codesniffer.text, and the application models, application forms, and libraries that I've tested are my directives he has to scan for. When I run it, I do get a lot of warnings. One of the major warnings is that my line exceeds 80 characters, and there has been a very big discussion whether or not this is something that we can drop from the Zen framework standard. It's still in there, so I need to fix this, but still, those are minor issues in regards to, for instance, the message template should contain a leading underscore. In my case, that's a big error. Okay? And of course, you can have your reports immediately, so you get a complete listing for each file that you scan for. Copy-paste detection. This is my favorite. It basically does what its name says. It detects copy-paste stuff. So if you have a developer that doesn't want to build a custom function in order to do the same work and just copy-paste the same code, this tool will detect this and report back on what's being duplicated. On command line, I explicitly set it to verbose because I want to see what happens. I wanted to write into an XML so I can use it in the reporting tools that I use. Of course, I only scan PHP files in my directories. Run it, and no duplication. So let's create a duplicate code. I just copy my common PHP class to common pub, and I also modify the class names so they match the new file. When I run it, I see immediately a message saying, hey, I found an exact clone with 205 duplicate lines, and 22.78% is duplicated out of 900 total lines of code. Sorry about that. As you can see, it immediately sees what's been duplicated, and it tells you from line 32 to line 237, everything is the same. So what happened here? Of course, you get the XML output, and this allows you to actually analyze the code that's being copy-pasted. So it's not always correct to say that it's duplicated, but most of the time it's just copy-paste work. And you can look at who committed it and talk to that person saying, you cannot do that. Mess detection. This is also very nice. Mess detection and PHP depend are actually measuring the quality of your code. Your quality of code depends on several things like dependencies from one class to another class. So if you have an extended class that extends from another class, that extends from another class, that's a huge dependency. You also have output that's not really correctly. So you can say, okay, hey, I want to verify that my code is more stable because I have only this amount of lines of code and only this amount of functions in it. So it has to be well within ranges. These are metric kind of tools, so they actually measure your code base and see what's going on. So it's not really useful for a junior developer to see these reports because they won't know what's happening. But as a lead developer, it might give you an idea on the quality of your code base and see where you can improve your work or your team. On command line, it's a very small command line. First of all, you give it a directory, you give it outputs, and then, of course, you can give it some templates that it uses. And, of course, you can have the report file, in this case, HTML. When I run it, it immediately gives me a lot of messages, but on command line it's not really readable. So this is a very nice report that I get. So basically what it says is I have to avoid variables with short names like IT or E. Unfortunately, it doesn't really look at the general agreement on standards. For instance, exceptions that are being thrown, you put them in variable E. When you use the for loop, your index, I, J, and so on, those are valid variables you can use, but PHP misdetection says, no, you cannot use that. So it's up to your lead developer or your development manager to say, hey, you need to fix this, or need to verify this. On the fourth line, you also see avoid unused local variables, such as test. So I actually used a variable test in a function that was not instantiated before that function or that condition was checked. So you get this kind of reports as well. And it's not really that it's going to cause a problem, but it can become a problem when the application has to be refactored, has to grow, other development teams join your forces. It can be a little bit of a mess then. So it's just reporting, and it's up to you to decide whether to act on it or not. If you have someone in your team that likes graphics, PHP Depend will give you those graphics. First of all, you get the dependency graphic in SVG. You also get an overview pyramid in SVG. And you can get several reports. I choose the summary XML that will explain more about what's actually going on with my dependency in my code base. When I run it, it does a lot of analysis, and it generates my graphics. First of all, you have my instability abstraction graph. So the closer to 0, the less good my code is. So with this small amount of classes, I'm fairly good. My lines of code are not really that big, so I don't really have to worry at this point. But as this application might grow into something bigger, these numbers will change as well, and also the result might change. So as long as everything remains green, I have to I just have to maintain it in green to know it's okay. If it's orange, I have to be careful. If it's gray, I also have to be careful, but not that much, because it's not really that important at this point. If you want to know what kind of framework is better, there's this website on WordPress that has done the dependencies for all major frameworks. Zen framework is also in there. And as you can see, the more code base you've got, the better the results will be, depending on which framework you're using. It also explains a lot about the various numbers on your pyramid that you saw, and gives you an idea on how to actually work and interpret the results. My favorite part, unit testing. For those who haven't heard about unit testing, it tests your code on a unit level. It can also include some database or web service testing, which are, technically speaking, integration tests. But I just put them in there because I use them interchangeable. So one time I have unit test, and the next one it's a database test or a web service test. And most of the major PHP frameworks, especially the big ones like Framework and Symfony, they are integrating very well with PHP Unit. So there's no reason not to use PHP Unit. I'm not going to talk about PHP Unit because I need another 3 hours just to get started. So I already have a presentation done, unit testing of Design Framework 1.8, and there is also a webinar that's available on the WebSense website. And if you want to see my newest presentation on unit testing, come and see me live at Tech 11 in Chicago, which will be next month. And if you're not able to make it, we will have another WebSense webinar after Tech that will go into more detail on unit testing. Packaging. PHP now comes with its own package tool called FAR, which is PHP archive, and you can compare it to Java, jars, or even zip files for them. And what it basically does is it takes your code base, compresses it, and puts it in a single file. And as of PHP 5.3.0, it's already included with your PHP build that you download from the PHP website. If you still run PHP 5.2 or below, you can have a package install for FAR. And the beauty of FAR is you can have a complete application tucked into a FAR, and you can execute classes as though they're on your file system right where you have them in a normal situation. So I have a FAR created with several classes. I just need to access class.php. All I need to do is include once my FAR, application is new class, and application run. Basic usage for FARs is that you want to, if you have custom libraries, you want to contain them, version them. Maybe you have some modules for a framework or for an application that you've built. You can have them deployed on FAR. If you're using a lot of images with your application, I'm not talking about nice pictures that people upload, but interface images, you can include those in your FAR. If you're using a plugin system, you can also call FARs. And it's very easy if you're deploying applications to production or to any other environment, because it's just a single file that you need to upload instead of all the files. I also had the question if it works with auto-loading and namespaces, and I can tell you, yes, it does. Automated builds. Ping. Ping is comparable to Apache Ant, or for the Linux folks, Make. Ping integrates very well with other PHP tools because it has a lot of tasks available that can execute several specific PHP tasks, as you will see in the next slide. First of all, you need to have a build.xml. You can list targets with or without dependencies. Dependency is that the task cannot be executed before the first task is being executed. For instance, if you deploy to exception, you want to have all the previous targets or tasks executed, and then you get a bar that you can deploy immediately to exception or even to production. First of all, you're going to do a project definition. All you have to do is create an XML, put in a node project, name it ZFTest in this case, give it a description, some framework unit testing, and your default target would be build. I also provide a property. The name is app there, and the value is my current work directory. And you will see immediately what its use is for. For instance, PHP lint. I can use PHP lint, write it to a file, .syntax_errors.txt. My file set the directory is my app there, again, which is my current directory. I include my directories, application models, application forms, and libraries that I've set. And my target is done. And this will execute PHP lint. PHP doc, same thing. I gave it a title. I gave it a destination there. The source code, I want the source code be available as well, so I set it to true. I use my template, HTML frames correctly, as my output. My file set, this is every time the same thing. And my project.files are readme, install, and change log. And that's it. Now I can actually execute PHP doc. For Code Sniffer, there is a task available for Code Sniffer, but it's a bit flaky, so I actually use the exec, which executes the command line tool. So I pass in the binary HPCS in user bin. I provide it with the parameters that I give on the command line, and again, my usual suspect of directories. And I start this execution in the current application directory. Copy-paste detection never got easier. All I provided are my directories. I can have a specific format, which is misdetection, and it will generate an XML. And this XML, if you're using a continuous integration system like Hudson or Cruise Control or Crucible on Jira, it can actually read those files and process them nicely in an interface. PHPMD, the code size, and the unused code. Again, I want to see the HTML dependencies. Again, I can add my various loggers. First of all, the graphics, the dependency chart, and my overview pyramid. And I also want to have a summary XML, which I can run into my toolset. And I can also have an extra analyzer added to the stream, which is the code rank mode. And I'm looking at all the methods that are being used in my code base. PHP unit. First of all, I'm calling a bootstrap, since I'm working with some framework. I need to access either the bootstrap of the framework or the bootstrapper from my Gem framework unit testing. In this case, with helper.php. I have several formatters. By plain use file is false, will display this in my interface, which is very convenient if I want to show something. I have sorry, I have the same details also written into PHP unit.text, and my Clover XML, which is also usable in other systems like CI systems or analyzing tools. So I can write those to clover.xml. And I have my typical PHP unit XML that allows me to view immediately stuff that's going wrong. You can also add some extra information here if you're thinking about creating, how's it called, the code coverage reports. So you can see how much of the code base is being covered. Most of the time I just add that in my PHP unit XML file, but you can also add it here and have the PHP unit being executed over things and generate those reports automatically. Again, the same directories that we have seen in the previous build target. And finally, we get to the default target being built. So my build target depends on all the previous ones. So call thing, and it will execute all the targets that we've discussed here and generate all the reports. And with those reports, this and move. PHP offers lots of tools. It's more consistent. All can be done. So thank you for your attention. And now I'm going to see if there are questions.
Let me read the very first one. What is the benefits of using the FAR? Does it improve performance? If yes, then how much?
Well, FAR is not really improving performance. It improves the way you can control your code base. So, for instance, if you have your own custom library tied to a specific framework, you can use a FAR in order to keep the code base of that library up to date and include that FAR in new projects that you're using. Instead of getting all the files copied from one directory into another, you now only have to include the FAR. And you can version that FAR as though you would version your library code in a versioning system. But instead of getting all the files, you just need one file, which is very convenient if you have to switch projects or deploy it to others. Does that answer your question? It's not about performance that you use these tools. It's more about the quality part. And quality always has the downside that it takes a little away of performance. But with FAR, it's your biggest problem would be I/O access times. But if you have very fast disks, it's not really that much of a downside. I think if you do some benchmark tests yourself, you will see that the performance loss is so little that you can only cherish the benefits of it.
Okay, I'm looking into the Q&A. So far, this is the only question. I mean, I'm sure that our audience will have to think about several things first and maybe have questions afterwards. Is it possible that they send you their questions? Can you show your...
Yeah, I was just typing, so if you have questions, you can always find me on Twitter, DragonBE. Post your questions there and hashtag it QA Zend webinar. Oh, that's a bit too big. Yeah, the QAZW, so I know that it's about the webinar. Okay?
That's great. Thank you so much. Well, as there are no further questions, I would say we finish with this. Thank you to our audience for listening, for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you all in the future.
Well, I want to express my gratitude to the audience as well. If you like it, let people know about this. Point them to the recorded webinar on the Zen website. Send me a tweet on DragonBE so I know I've done a good job. And if I didn't do a good job, let me know as well, because I want to improve my talks, because this is all for you. And if you enjoy it, you're most welcome. I love doing this, and I'm looking forward to doing more webinars in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.